Are you ready to improve your health without the unrealistic BS? You're tuning in to Healthy Not Hungry, the podcast that believes that health begins in your mind. I'm your host, clinical nutritionist, PT, and mental health enthusiast Rach, and I'm so excited to have you join me. Hello and welcome to another episode of Healthy Not Hungry. I'm your host Rach. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today I'm so excited because we are joined by the lovely Charlotte. So Charlotte is a pre and postnatal yoga and mindfulness teacher and also host of the Mama Time podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, no, it's going to be a good one. I really love Charlotte's perspective when it comes to looking after our bodies, especially from like a postnatal and mum life perspective. So I'm really excited to dive into this. But to begin, could you introduce yourself to everyone and tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became the lovely person you are today?
Yeah, happy to. So, I am a mom of 3 children. I have a 14-year-old stepdaughter, a 5-year-old little boy, and a 2.5-year-old little boy. And I have been teaching yoga since before all of these kids. And that my yoga journey has really changed as I became a mother. I used to really pride myself on, like most people as they get into yoga, like a strong vinyasa, hot yoga practice was like what I lived for. And then becoming a mother completely changed that. Becoming pregnant really forced me to soften my practice. And shockingly to me, instead of looking at it as an inconvenience, I really enjoyed that softness to it. It made me like strip the layers back and look at all of the more subtle sides of yoga, because traditional yoga is comprised of 8 limbs and the physical postures are only one of those. So that's kind of the journey that my practice took throughout my pregnancy. And then as I actually had my kids as well, I love training. Like I absolutely love all different types of exercise. Like I stick to my yoga practice, but I do loads of other things as well. But in those early postpartum days, like I mentioned, I've had 2 C-sections with both of my boys. And so that physical journey took me a little bit longer. I was still up walking and things like that because I had stayed quite active throughout my pregnancy. But again, it just helped me focus on those more subtle aspects of yoga. And that's when I became so passionate about the mindfulness component in yoga as well, because it really helped me through my pregnancy because I was a little bit fearful of birth. And so just having those meditations and things like that to really help calm me down was so helpful. But then especially in that postpartum journey when you have less time for those things, but I was finding that I was needing those mindfulness practices and even just the time on my mat more than ever, just to give back to myself. Because I guess I was probably a little bit smug. I probably thought I knew a lot more than I did because I had been a stepmom for over 5 years before actually giving birth to my boys. But I came into her life when she was 3. And so I missed all of those early stages, right? Like the newborn stage, all of that. I was not present for that. And so like many women, I was quite shocked about just the physical and emotional toll that takes and how much I really needed my yoga and mindfulness practice in that time, but just how little time I had to give back to myself. So now I really love helping moms prioritize their physical and their mental well-being through yoga and mindfulness, but in a way that actually works for moms to, put it simply, really help recalibrate their nervous system so you can come back to feeling good and balance out all that stress, that overstimulation, all those things that come up in all stages of motherhood.
Thank you for sharing your journey. Yeah, I think it's definitely a shock to the system for any new mother, but especially like you said, you had that smugness coming in thinking, oh, I know what to expect. And even for women, I think, who haven't been mums or stepmoms before, like I think it's so common where you get one of two. You get women who are either like, I have no idea and I'm surrendering to that, or you get the ones who are like, oh, I've got this covered. And either way, it's a shock to the system. And especially it's a shock to going from getting this time to yourself and being able to devote that time that you need to calm and recalibrate to all of a sudden maybe not having those options that you once had. It can be a really tricky season to navigate through.
Yeah, for sure it is. And like I said, that's the interesting like paradox of it too. Is like, wait, you actually need that time for yourself so much more because there's so many more demands of life, but it's so much harder to fit it in. But there are lots of ways that you can do that. So I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, and I'd love to touch on, so you said about, supporting our nervous system. I know for you that's a huge passion point of your work at the moment, and especially for
Yes.
yourself. But can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think I kind of touched on this before when we look at, especially in early motherhood, right? All of a sudden you go from being pregnant, you're a person without children prior to that, your life, your time looks very different. And then you go into this space where you have a child. And I don't think that we talk about the demands of that enough. So, from a physical perspective, you as the mother, you're going through a huge hormonal dip that's going to bring all sorts of emotions up in you. You're navigating generally lack of sleep, if any sleep at all, and how to function off of that while having huge new demands and a huge learning curve of learning to look after your child. Because even if you've had children before, each child is different. Each child, doesn't come with their own manual, but their own unique needs. And I think that just continues, like I said, throughout your journey as a mother. You have
Mm.
different demands put on you throughout different stages of your child's life, and you are the one having to adapt to that. This applies to both parents as well, but especially in that early postpartum stage, there is so much that's on moms. And I think we don't speak enough about, okay, well, how are we actually supporting ourselves in that? How are we looking after our own well being? Because I've seen so many of my friends, of women that I've worked with, who just feel like a shell of themselves in that time period because of all of those just over consuming things that I've just spoken about that can really take over your life. And I think it's important just to strip back the layers and say, okay, there's so many boxes that need to be ticked, but how do I actually get myself to a place of feeling okay in my own body, feeling okay in my own mind? Because when we're very stuck in that stress state, that fight or flight state, we're going to feel heightened, anxious, stressed, and it's going to start to trickle down and affect even more areas of our life the more we stay there. It's going to, you know, it's going to make our sleep worse. It's going to make our stress levels worse. There's so many physical and emotional symptoms that come from staying in that place, which can so easily happen for moms because half the time we're running on adrenaline solely. So if we don't learn really simple but effective tools to help bring us back down into a more calm space, and it's not about being calm all the time, it's just learning how to regulate. How do I stay regulated in a stressful moment so that I can be present and be the person that I want to be and have that little moment of pause before I react to something? So I can just, to put it simply, just come back to feeling like yourself. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
So it's kind of like setting that self-care foundation so that
Yes.
if you're trying to prevent, right? Like you're trying to keep yourself feeling grounded and calm and taking that moment so that when the inevitable stress or overwhelm does hit, maybe you're a little bit more prepared to cope with it.
Yeah, 100%. So one, it's about counterbalancing all the stress, the go, go, go of motherhood. Like I said, I'm someone who loves all different types of exercise. Like I did a lot of high intensity and things like that before I had kids. But what I found in motherhood was that I was always so go, 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 high stress that's I still do that, but I actually really needed to have those more calming practices in motherhood because there was so much less of that in my life. So yeah, part of it is about counterbalancing all the things that happen. And then two, when you are in a really triggering moment. So for me at the moment, like I said, my boys are 5 and 2.5. And when they bicker or they're really loud and like screaming, like that's a very big trigger for me at the moment, especially when they're just bickering with each other. They might be hitting each other, whatever that looks like. If I'm not in a regulated place, or if I find myself getting out of a regulated place without realizing it, which look, it does happen. I talk about this all the time. I'm not perfect. There are times that I react in ways that I wish I didn't. However, the more you practice this nervous system regulation with various techniques, which we can go into, but the more you practice it, the more you can kind of notice what's coming up for you, even if it's like just really subtle changes happening in your body. So, for example, with my kids, when they're, yeah, making me feel all of these stresses and these things when they're arguing and, yeah, just running around the house screaming, maybe breaking things, maybe hurting each other, whatever that looks like with my two boys that day, because it pretty much
Yeah.
happens every day.
Yeah.
I'll feel that tightness in my chest, that sort of warm feeling. It's almost like this energy sort of creeping up in my body. And I can notice that. And because I'm so familiar with taking a deep breath as part of my daily yoga practice, where I prioritize those calming deep breaths, I can be like, okay, I'm going to take a very deep breath. And then I'm going to respond to them in a much more conscious way than if I am just like, going from 0 to 100 to that fight or flight state without realizing it. And then I'm just going to yell and react at them in a way that I wish I wouldn't and isn't going to be more effective. Then they're going to get more upset and it's going to cause even more issues than I had before, instead of me just coming back down, calming myself a little bit, and then, parenting however I want to parent in that moment that's going to give a better result for everyone. So that's just, yeah, one example of how that looks in my daily life at the moment.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's having that awareness about it too. I know with my husband and I, like, kids are kids. They are always going to do something that triggers you. But I think there's two things that we kind of come down to. Number one is majority of the time, my daughter does not set out to ruin our day. So when she does
100%.
something kiddish, it's not a personal attack. And this is something my husband and I talk about a lot, because when you take it as a personal attack, it's really hard not to be triggered, because you're like, why are
Yes.
you doing this? But I think it's trying to neutralize it and realize, okay, I'm in a place where I'm like, I can see that she's just being a kid. She's testing the boundaries. She's learning, but she's not doing this to personally mess with me. I think is one thing. But the other thing that we kind of take from it is that we can see when we're not capable of thinking that it's usually we are burnt out and overstimulated and we haven't taken that time for ourselves to calm and regulate. And it's, for
100%.
us, it's taking a night each a week that we go and do something for ourselves. Like I'll go to a dance class, or if I'm not feeling up to it, I might go have a sauna, or I find something based on where I'm at that week that I really enjoy. And he does something similar on a different night. But I think it's really important to normalize taking the time for whatever it might be that
100%.
helps you be able to walk in with a more level headed approach.
100%. And I feel that too. Like for me, yeah, yeah, I can notice like I haven't taken enough time for myself when I feel like yelling at everyone all the time. Now I can catch myself and not do that, because that's not how I want to show up as a mom. But I can feel that rising up in me. And a lot of the times it's exactly like you said. Wait, when was the last time I took some time for myself? Because sometimes it's just not that easy. Sometimes there's so much going on. And that's why I really love to help moms find ways that they can fit these practices with, 2 to 10 minutes in their day. Like just finding those little bits of time, they can have such a big impact. You don't have to have this whole, I used to think for my yoga practice to be successful, I needed 75 minutes in a class, with my favorite teacher. And don't get me wrong, I love when I get the opportunity to do that. I still do try to do that for myself. But when I notice the biggest impact on how I actually feel day to day is when I'm consistent with those little time frames. So for me, what works in my schedule at the moment is I will take about 10 minutes in the morning. Usually I would love to be someone who gets up before my kids does and have that time to myself. My youngest is a really early riser, so that doesn't happen. Like sometimes he's up before the sun. So normally I'll get up with him and I'll get him organized for the day, or like for breakfast and stuff. Like we'll have a little bit of cuddles, things like that. Like I'll give in to him so he fills his cup up a little bit. Then I'll give him some breakfast and set him up with an activity. Sometimes that's him chasing the ball around the house. He could do that all day long. He loves that, just kicking a ball around the house. Or it'll be like a couple episodes of Bluey. like whatever that is, whatever's going to fill his cup up in the morning. And then my husband's sort of up around him as well. So he is being looked after. And then I'll go outside. I'll take 10 minutes to myself. I'll go outside on my yoga mat and just do a really simple, gentle stretch and breath focus practice. And then I'll sit in meditation for like 5 minutes. And if I get that time to focus on my breath, move in a way that's going to make me feel energized, clear my head a little bit so I'm not just like up with my thoughts running throughout the day, I show up for the rest of my day in a completely different way because I've set that tone. Now, it doesn't have to be in the morning. I know mornings can be really tricky for moms, like especially based off the night that you've had. So, some other times you can get that in would maybe be your kids' nap time, your lunch break if you're at work or working from home, or even in your evening routine, even just doing a simple practice in bed before you fall asleep, like that can be incredible too. So I think with moms, it's really about working with the time frame that you have in the season of motherhood that you're in, because it's going to look different in those different seasons.
Definitely. And that's such great advice. And, like it is obviously the optimum is to get that actual time, but the reality of it is sometimes that's not going to happen. So making sure that you've got something that can consistently happen,
Yeah.
even when other things don't go to plan, is so important. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. For someone who maybe feels like an aversion when you say about sitting outside and meditating, is there something little that they can start with that's maybe a bit more? Do you know what I mean? Like for some people, I know if you mention the word meditation, they're like, I can't meditate, it's not for me.
Oh,
But
yeah.
what's something
Yeah.
simple? Yeah.
Yeah. So simple, like just a mindfulness practice. Mindfulness doesn't have to be meditation. So there are so many different ways to practice mindfulness. Like I think when we really strip it back, mindfulness is just doing the task that you're doing, or it doesn't have to be a task, just doing one thing at a time and being present in that thing. So maybe you have like a ritual around your coffee or your tea or something that you love in the morning. I would recommend, like, I love going outside first thing in the morning because I love getting that sunlight and things like that. So go into whatever space makes you feel good. There's a lot of power in going outside, but I know that's not accessible to everyone. But go into a space that makes you feel good. Maybe it's next to a house plant, whatever that is. Find a space that you enjoy being in and just do that. Have your coffee, have your tea, really focus on that ritual on its own without trying to do anything else. And you can do that for so many different things too. You can do that on a walk, like instead of putting a podcast on, which I love, but sometimes, you just need that time to yourself. Just do that one thing and focus on that. I think for moms especially, you might get up in the morning, have your coffee, and just go straight to scrolling on your phone. And even just taking away that element, because that's just, again, contributing to that overstimulation, and starting your day with that is really going to impact how you feel the rest of your day. So just try to strip things back. And even that can feel really uncomfortable. I just want to point out that, like, when you are somebody who's not used to doing those practices, just only doing that and not having that overstimulation, even that's going to be like, whoa, this is such a change. But just give yourself that thing to focus on and start there. And then you might be able to incorporate different things, because mindfulness is a muscle. Like, we look at it like training, or like that's how I like to think about it. You're not going to walk into a gym and start, doing 100-kilo deadlifts. Like, you're not going to start a mindfulness practice and go into a silent 30-minute meditation. Like, that is going to feel so uncomfortable in your body. You really need to meet yourself where you're at. Another good way to do that, if you're somebody who kind of struggles with thoughts or things like that, is movement first and mindfulness second. Because moving that energy, that's, might be making it uncomfortable to like just sit down and do one thing. If you get a bit of movement in first, you're going to be able to sit and just do one thing a little bit more easily, because you've already taken out some of that, maybe nervous energy that you've got within you. That's actually what yoga was designed for. So the whole purpose of yoga, why it was created traditionally, was to prepare the body and the mind for meditation. That's where all the poses come from. And that, again, that can be walking, that can be all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be yoga. Like I said, I enjoy that in the morning because just those simple stretches, it just helped me feel more awake. Sometimes after a not so restful night, that helps me wake up. But then followed by, that little bit of mindfulness time. I'm just going to mention 2 other things that I love as far as mindfulness, especially for moms, is if you don't want to have a meditation, or take that cup of coffee or something like that, gratitude is a huge one. Just taking a couple moments and thinking to yourself or writing it down. Some people love to journal. They need that really tangible aspect of it, and I think that is amazing. That doesn't work for me consistently. Like, I will lose that journal, I will put it somewhere, I won't stay consistent with it. So a lot of times I just do this in my head, and like I said, that doesn't work for everybody. Find what works for you. Even the notes app in your phone can be amazing. But just write down 3 things you're grateful for that morning, and don't overcomplicate it. It can be your coffee, it can be cuddles with your kids, it can be that the sun is shining, whatever that looks like for you that day. But you're going to train your brain to look for more things like that. So that just continues to be really beneficial throughout your day because you're setting the tone for your day like that. And then affirmations. If I'm really stuck for time, like especially when, my kids were smaller and you're starting your day, well, for me anyway, like breastfeeding in the morning, like I really tried to get that meditation in while I was breastfeeding with them, and they were just too wiggly for me. Like, I know that works for some people, but what I would do instead is I would just put on a guided affirmation, like YouTube or Spotify soundtrack from someone, and I would just listen to those as I was breastfeeding them. And it's just so powerful. You've got, some beautiful affirmations playing in the background. You can literally Google whatever type of affirmations that you want and find some sort of audio track to listen to. Ideally, while you're not doing too many different things because you want it to sink in. But like I said, I would do that while I was laying there breastfeeding my baby. And again, that was just another way to kind of get that mindfulness, like very intentional time in the morning or in the evening if I really had no other time for myself. So that gives you a few different ways you can feed that into your day when you're short on time.
No, that is awesome. Thank you. There's such great options. I know it got me thinking about like when I tend to do stuff. I know as far as gratitude goes, so in the car on the way to school in the morning, my daughter and I've actually stopped putting on music and we'll drive and chat and I'll say, "Oh, what are you grateful for today?"
Oh,
And
I
we'll
love
do it to
that.
each other. Or in the nighttime, one thing we do when we sit down at the table to eat dinner, our conversation is like we'll turn off the TV, just be like, "No, this is our time together." And one thing we ask each other is, "What was the best part of your day?"
Yeah,
And
that's lovely.
even just taking little things, or like if I've finished work and I'm driving to do school pickup, it's really hard because sometimes you want to squeeze in a podcast or a phone call or, something. And I've been trying, especially if it's been a big day and mentally I'm a little bit taxed, I will just have silence in the car for that
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes while I'm driving. And I find even just that to be alone with my thoughts and kind of like recalibrate is really helpful.
Yeah, that's a really good tip too. And I agree with you. I'm someone who, like, if I don't think about it, I will have like a different podcast on all day, or like,
Oh, yeah.
a nonfiction book or something, because I love podcasts, obviously. I love listening to things. I love learning from people. But sometimes I have to stop myself and be like, okay, this is actually doing more harm than good now. I have taken in enough information today. I need that chance to like let it recalibrate. So yeah, like I said, sometimes just going on a walk, not putting any music on, not putting a podcast on, or like you said, in the car can be so beneficial. And I love how you bring your daughter into it too. I think that's really cool. Like I said, one of my sons is 5, and I mentioned my morning practice, like 10 minutes. Sometimes that is so interrupted. So this is kind of twofold. One, don't aim for perfection. Aim for whatever you get. Even if you aim to do a 10-minute practice and you get interrupted at 5 minutes and you can't come back to it, like, that's cool. You still got 5 minutes in. That's amazing. Focus on that, not the 5 minutes you didn't get. And the other thing is that, if my practice is interrupted by like my 5-year-old, for example, I'll bring him into it. So if I'm starting my meditation, and the way I start my meditation in the morning is I think of a few things I'm grateful for, then I kind of get into that silence and things like that. But I'll just incorporate him into it. So I'll say, and especially when he was younger, like he didn't really understand what gratitude was. So I would say, okay, what makes you happy today? What are you happy about today? And we would go into that, which was really beautiful. And then it makes you drop into be present with what's coming up for you as well. Because that's the whole point of mindfulness. It's just being present in what you're doing. Not like, oh, well, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, and you get all in your feelings about, what you want a situation to be instead of just accepting it for what it is. And when you can find that acceptance and be really present just with whatever is happening, that's actually such a superpower in motherhood because you can enjoy those little moments with your kids so much more by bringing them into whatever you're doing. Like I said, that's just one example. But if he interrupts me, instead of being super frustrated with him and telling him to go inside, like it is what it is. He can be part of it. And that creates a really beautiful connection time for us as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's working with what you've got, right?
100%.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on today, Charlotte. I've learnt so much and it's been such a breath of fresh air to listen to this. But for anyone who does want to get in contact or find more about you, what's the best place for them to find you?
So I'm on Instagram at mama, MAMA _time _yoga, or you can email me at hello@mamatime.com, or you can head on to my website, which is just mamatimeyoga.com, or head over to my podcast, Mama Time, which you can find on Apple, Spotify, all the places.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll link that in the show notes too for anyone who does want to check her out. But thank you for your time, Charlotte. It's been amazing.
It's been so nice. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that's all we have time for today, but thank you so much for tuning in and joining us once again. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like, and leave a review on your favorite podcast streaming site or share with someone who you think could benefit from this episode. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media at Healthy Not Hungry or Healthy Not Hungry Podcast.